He is a writer, he's a writer. And they're super obsessed with horror movies and things like that. And I just thought it was gonna be like really dark and messed up. And it wasn't. It's been a week. And not like it's been a week since I read it, but like it has. But also it's been a week. And there's a reason why I am even more scatterboxy than usual. So, hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. And welcome back to part 2 of all the things that I read in August. So as promised, we are back here quickly. I wanted to break it into 2 more bite-sized-ish videos and get them out to you quick. I know I am super late in the month getting this out, and if you guys haven't watched part 1, check that out. I will link it for you down below, and then you can get more of sort of like an insight about why the month of August has been cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on my side of the world. But let's dive in to all the other things that I read in August now. So the next book is one I've talked about on my Instagram and I've talked about in other videos already, but it's Kill All Your Darlings by David Bell. And I totally loved this book. And yes, it has a very similar plot to the plot by Jean Hanoff Korelitz. And I haven't read that yet, but I do have it. And it's funny. These books came out within a couple of weeks of each other, I want to say, or like within a month of each other. And they have a similar core story, but I think they very much deviate from there. So in this book, Connor is trying to get tenure and he hasn't published anything in years. His wife and his son were both tragically killed. He's been dealing with a lot of stuff over this time period. And he has this star student who submits her thesis to him, which is sort of like this thriller mystery murder. And then the next day she disappears. So when the book opens, it's a year later and he has just done his book launch at the bookstore. He's put the book out in his name and he comes home from that book launch like riding high, and who is sitting in his living room but the missing student. So complications ensue, as you can imagine. But as if that's not bad enough, the book that he's put out has actually also implicated him in a crime that took place in the town. So Connor is really caught between a rock and a hard place because nobody knows that he's plagiarized this book. Nobody knows what happened to the girl when she disappeared or that she's back. And now he has to explain how he was able to write this book that very closely resembles a murder and try and convince the cops he doesn't know anything about it. So I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed it from the standpoint of the writing life. I loved the writing in this. This is my first David Bell, and he has written a ton of books. And I will definitely be reading more of them, but I really enjoyed it. I thought the reveal was really good. There was it was a little bit drawn out at the ending. The ultimate ending I was happy with. The core of it I was very happy with. Like this is like 4-star territory for me, but I was totally invested in this book and I highly recommend it. It was great fun. And after I read the plot, I will kind of talk about them in conjunction as well. So that book also has, I believe, a professor or a teacher who winds up stealing one of their students' works, but I think it deviates from there. I also took a super deep dive on celebrity bios, which I kind of 100% love celebrity gossip. Like when it comes to like, where do you get your news? I record e-news daily every single day, and then I usually wind up watching some of it the next morning when I'm getting ready for work. It's my #1 news source, but I do love me some celebrity gossip. I always have, I always will. So the first book I listened to was the Jessica Simpson book called Open Book. And I'd heard tons of great things about this. And I was never a Jessica Simpson fan. Like I never didn't like her, but I was never into her music. I did watch the beginning of Newlyweds with her and Nick Lachey. I 1000% did. And I had seen interviews when this book came out because she reveals a lot. Like she definitely is, I mean, it's called Open Book for a reason, but she really pulls back the curtain and talks about her addictions, her drinking. She talks about her marriages. She talks about her family. She talks about her struggles with her body and relationships that she had. And I wouldn't say she necessarily like poo-poos people. She definitely takes on a lot of responsibility and she owns her part in things, and she owns like what went wrong in her marriage with Nick. She talks a lot about just basically, and I say this as someone who has been in a bad relationship, has, you know, was like a doormat for John Mayer and would keep going back to him when she knew that she shouldn't. She talked about, I didn't even know this, that she basically sort of had like an emotional affair with Johnny Knoxville. And he was married and she was married, but it was when they were doing the Dukes of Hazzard, and like nothing happened, but they were completely connected. And it just was so fascinating to me. And I really did not expect to love this book as much as I did, but she narrates it herself, and she really just talks about everything that she's been through. And I really enjoyed it a ton. Like it was one of those things where I would like listen to it when I was on a walk, and I was listening to it while I was cleaning the house, and I was just sort of like, what else can I do that I can do an audiobook at the same time? But it wasn't a short book. It's 11 hours, but I loved it. If you like celebrity bios, whether or not you're a Jessica fan or not, I would 100% give this one a go, because I found it really intriguing. I found her relationships, the music business part of things, and just her, again, like her complete transparency about so much that went on in her life and her struggles. Because I feel like these were things that, how would you know? But I really appreciated the peek behind the curtain and found it really kind of fascinating, especially some of the stuff with Newlyweds, about when her and Nick were not getting along and how they filmed and how certain things played out. So I guess she does kind of poo-poo him a bit, but at the same time, she doesn't cut herself a break or give herself a free pass on things or say it was all them and I'm innocent in all this. Like, she fully owns her stuff too. But I mean, it flipped a switch in me, and I was like, what other celebrity bios can I listen to immediately? So the next one I listened to was Rob Lowe's Stories I Only Tell My Friends. And he narrates this one as well, or like he narrates his own book, just like Jessica Simpson did. And this book was a little bit disappointing in that I was definitely a Rob Lowe girl. I remember The Outsiders, St. Elmo's Fire, like just Class. Like, I'm trying to think of like all the great 80s movies. I just loved him so much. I remember the Scandal that hit, but the beginning of this book, like, I didn't know anything about his personal life, like his background, anything at all, his upbringing. It was really interesting. And not only in how, like, he wound up moving to Malibu and like going to school with like Chris and Sean Penn and Charlie Sheen and Emilio Estevez, and just the people who he crossed paths with as a kid and continued to cross paths with as an adult, and sort of how his love of film and acting and everything was sparked. So I found that the family history to be really interesting. It's a lot at the beginning, it's a lot of his family, but it's still good because he gives you great context. But what I loved the most is him talking about The Outsiders, which was like his first like big movie. And he goes into such huge detail about the auditioning process and going back and forth like in New York and LA, and you know what happened to his role in that movie and shooting it down in Oklahoma. And he talks about Matt Dillon. There's just like some great stuff, and like Patrick Swayze. Guys, I like 1000% want to just rent that in every other Rob Lowe movie now, because I'm completely like in the zone. But there was such great detail about what that experience was like for him, the camaraderie amongst the group, filming, you know, being on set. It was like so atmospheric, like you could feel like you were a part of that. And he talks about basically every other role he had up until The West Wing, but never again does he go into that kind of detail. And I was craving it, and I wanted to know more about like what was it really like in St. Elmo's and being a part of the Brat Pack and what that meant. And he told little stories and vignettes here and there, which were good, but I wanted more. And he also, you know, goes into his addiction and his drinking problems and how he got clean. And he does touch on a lot of things, but he also, I feel like, holds a lot back. So I kind of wanted more dirt, for lack of a better word. And I know that probably makes me shallow, but I just wanted to know more about what it was like, especially during that kind of like crazy heyday. And again, he touches on things, but a lot of it is like, we partied a lot, we got wild, and I guess I just wanted like some tea. And then I never watched The West Wing, but I definitely am intrigued about it. So he did talk about that. It didn't resonate in the same way because I wasn't as familiar with it. But then he was kind of like, and then I did Brothers and Sisters, and then I did this, and then I did that, and kind of like, and we're done. So I felt like the end of it was rushed. Like he skipped some huge things that he was in. I loved him in Brothers and Sisters. I loved that show. But he kind of like skips over other chunks too. So it was entertaining. I wanted more tea. But I'm also not mad about having Rob Lowe in my ear for all those hours. So again, definitely has sparked an interest in me. I am planning to listen to the Andrew McCarthy book as well, because I'm enjoying other people of a certain time talking about the same stuff. And not so much in like comparing their stories, but it's fun to see how all these people intermingle and they're all talking about this same era in time, and they all work together on different movies and different shows, movies more so. So it was definitely good. It was definitely good. And then to round out my Brat Pack, I listened to Inside Out by Demi Moore. She also narrates this one herself. This is another one where I had heard some things ahead of time. She was doing some interviews before and some things that she talked about. She also gets pretty raw about a lot of things. She's pretty transparent about a lot of things. And I feel like anything that, like in the Jessica Simpson book, I knew some of it, but not all of it. So I almost found that more shocking because I was less familiar. And with Demi, I feel like I also knew a lot of stuff going into the book. But she's another one that I was always a fan of. Like, again, love St. Elmo's Fire. I know Indecent Proposal, but I loved Indecent Proposal. She talks about Ghost, obviously, but I've always very much enjoyed her as an actress. And what's interesting about this book is, you know, she obviously talks about her relationships that she has, but like in Rob Lowe's book, he talks about how him and Demi were involved before she got involved with Emilio Estevez. And then she's like, I know Rob mentioned that like we kind of had a hot fling, but I don't remember it, but thanks. And whether it was because she was already battling drugs and alcohol at the time and was actually like in a fast track rehab right before they filmed St. Elmo's, unclear if that's why she doesn't remember it. But it was kind of funny for him being like hot and heavy, and she was sort of like, don't really remember that, but thanks for letting me know. And she talks about, you know, so much of her core relationship is with Bruce Willis, and she talks about how they met and sort of what a whirlwind it was. And what I found really interesting is she remains extremely complimentary of him. It sounds like they continue to be really good friends, even when things were falling apart in their marriage. It was around the time when her mom was ill and passed away, and how he was so there for her and there for her children and there for the family. She drags Ashton a little bit, but she never drags Bruce. And that might just be the differences in their relationship. But I didn't know a lot about how her kids stopped talking to her at one point and just sort of how low things got for her. So again, I found it really interesting. She talks a lot about how challenging it was to be a woman in the industry. She talks about, you know, sort of how she was objectified at certain times and sort of the flack she got for those photos she did with Annie Leibovitz and sort of all of these real kind of like milestone moments, and whether it was in G.I. Jane and the money she made for that and just sort of different precedents that she started to set. But I did find it really interesting. And again, I feel like maybe St. Elmo's will be the first one to start with. I haven't watched that movie in so long, and I loved that movie. I don't know if it'll hold up, but I loved that movie. It was just sort of like everybody together. But it was good. It was fun to listen to. It was really interesting to listen to. And again, I'm just sort of on this like celeb train right now. So I'm gonna keep going with it. And yeah, it was good. But they've been sort of good palate cleansers between different books that I was reading. And also, like I said, I'm happy to be back listening to audiobooks because I was having such a hard time focusing on things. And I feel like these helped me kind of get over that audiobook slump that I'd been in. And then the last audiobook I did is Deep Work by Cal Newport. So technically I finished this on September 1st, but whatever, we're gonna talk about it here. It was a fast book. I think it was 8 hours long. So this is a nonfiction book, and I was listening to some podcast and I was listening to some writer talk about how they focus. And they talked about this book, and the concept of deep work it's about sort of minimizing distractions and how you can focus and go deep on your work. So this book came out in 2016, and it's really, supposed to be about methods to be able to limit distractions and to be able to focus on your work and go deep into things and to be productive through doing that deep work and, have super productive work days, or if it's a hobby or whatever it is. So I was really eager to glean some tangible to-dos and tangible steps that I could take to help minimize the distractions, because like I said, it's been a rough month. There've been a lot of distractions. There's been a lot going on, and I have struggled to manage limiting my distractions and being able to maintain my focus. And I'm sorry to say the book didn't totally help me. So the first half of the book is kind of like all the science behind distractions are bad. Like, we know. So there was nothing new to it. So there were like case studies and different people they were talking about. And it was just sort of like all the ways that we can be distracted in the modern age. And it's all things we know. So I probably would have been served better by just skipping to the second part, which was sort of supposed to be the actionable part of the book. And there were some good takeaways that I had from it. And I guess what I just really want is like a checklist of things that I can do to like flip the switch from being super distracted to being super focused. Like, just tell me what to do. Just give me the 10 steps so that I can do the things and be instantly more productive. I mean, is that too much to ask for? But some of the tips that I did take away from this, which I haven't implemented yet, because again, it's been a week. And not like it's been a week since I read it, but like it has, but also it's been a week. But some of the things are creating a scorecard for yourself and giving yourself a weekly review of how you did, and figuring out sort of where your trouble spots are, where you need to readjust, where you need to realign. And he talks about creating a daily schedule and blocking your day, and basically just taking a blank notebook and writing, whenever your day starts to whenever your day ends, and doing like 30-minute increments and putting everything there, whether it's emails, it's eating, it's exercising, it's I'm going to work on this project for work, I'm going to work on this project at home, and giving yourself the time you think you need. And if it's 10:30 in the morning and you're supposed to be done with that time block of finishing the PowerPoint, but you're not done yet and you need till 11, you basically rewrite your schedule for the rest of the day and keep reorganizing stuff and doing this over and over again and trying to figure out what time you need, allowing for the time you need, and sticking to the things that need to get done, and theoretically being focused on that thing when you're doing it, and not kind of doing the PowerPoint and kind of answering the phone and kind of answering the emails and then getting up to do this and then stopping to watch YouTube for 10 minutes. And your brain needs time to reset from one activity to the next. And the jumping around, we all know the multitasking is like not practical. I have 57 tabs open up on my computer at all times, and you can't focus on any one thing. The same way if you're multitasking and you have 57 tabs open up in your head, it's the same idea. And when you have that many tabs open, your computer will crash, and so will you. So again, I feel like it's a lot of things that I knew, but they were great reminders of. And I think any kind of nonfiction self-help advice book, you can have the same content, but it can be delivered in different ways, and you can hear the same thing over and over again, but when it's packaged in a way that you can connect to, maybe that's the thing that helps you get to that next step. So I keep trying. I'm like the Taylor Swift song, this is me trying to figure it out. But it talks about not spending time on shallow work, having a fixed schedule for productivity so you maximize your hours, and having a fixed quitting time to your day. And then, I know this is like easier said than done for a lot of us, and it's not being reachable after work. So if you work and at 6 p.m. you are done, you are done. Barring emergency situations, if you can do these things and set limits, because as soon as you open the work email and then fire off a few from your phone. You're back in that mindset. Your mind has shifted again. You're taken away from the other things that you were doing. And he also talks about being hard to reach. And I think we all know this. I have done this over and over again in my career to my detriment, is if you are answering those emails at 9:30 at night, 'cause you're like, oh, I'll just fire back a quick thing and then I won't have to deal with it in the morning. All of a sudden people are like, oh, you're accessible at 9:30 at night. Let me just send another reply and maybe you can do this. And then people are trained to expect those kinds of responses from you. So again, if you're able to create those boundaries, create them, and create whatever boundaries you can within whatever circumstance it is that you have, be it a job or at home or other responsibilities. And I like that idea because I am definitely someone who will fall victim, because I've had jobs where I've kind of been on call, not kind of, have been on call 24/7. So it's hard to undo that mindset. And I think working from home is another issue that's been created for a lot of us, in that there is no break between work and home. So figure out how to create that break for yourself, whether it's going for a walk or having sort of an end of the day ritual, whether it's changing your outfit, you know, taking a shower, whatever break it is that ends your day that would replace what your commute used to be, or whatever your transition from work to home used to be. Create some kind of ritual that can mimic that. And same in the morning, how you transition from home to work, even if you're just transitioning from your bedroom to your home office or your living room or your kitchen table or wherever you're working. So I liked a lot of the reminders in this. So it wasn't a bad book in any way. It was kind of a 3-star. I would say, unless you're interested in the true science of it, I would kind of skip to part 2 and listen to that, because I did find some good takeaways. And I thought it was helpful. So that's gonna do it for the second part of what I read in August. I am already having an incredible September reading, I would say. I have finished 2 books already. I am partway through one. I just started another, and I just started an audiobook. So many balls in the air. But Serious September, and then I'm starting my Dark Academia fall plans. And there are so many good books coming out. So I am hook, line, and sinker, totally down for reading and listening to all the things. And it's great. It's absolutely great. But let me know if you guys have read any of these, what you're reading, what's going on, and I will talk to you down below, and I will see you in another video. Thanks, everybody. Bye.